How do you predict whether a song will be a hit? How do you know that once you've finished writing and recording an album that you're onto a winner? Well, record labels employ people whose very jobs are to identify that next big thing. They employ producers and session musicians to literally engineer that next hit. But if the music industry has taught us anything in its rich, long history, it's that you can never be too sure. Many songs by popular artists that were engineered to be global hits just weren't for one reason or another. Think Katy Perry's Witness album or Taylor Swift's Me. Similarly, songs that you'd have put your mortgage on would never resonate with the masses have done. Think Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon or Radiohead's Creep. You can never really know, but occasionally the stars just align. And a song that was either written as an afterthought or as filler, or a song that you never thought would be a single, ends up being an absolute global smash. One thing is for sure, you're almost always glad that the artist in question ended up following through on their muse. Here are the stories of 5 songs that almost never were. Okay, so we're kicking things off with a favourite of mine, Supersonic by Oasis. Yes, the legendary band's debut single, the song that put them on the map, the song that launched them into superstardom, was a song that could easily have never been. In fact, when the band entered the studio to record their debut album, Definitely Maybe, Supersonic was yet to be written. The story goes, as Noel tells it in the band's documentary film Supersonic, Bring It On Down was to be the band's first single, but despite the song being written and rehearsed, the band just couldn't get the song to sound right during the recording process. And with only 2 days left in the studio, the band had nothing to show for the time that they spent there.
We were up to the next but last day, and we didn't really have anything.
We sent to Liverpool by Creation to do some demos, and for whatever reason, the stuff that we were doing, it wasn't really happening. Bring It On Down was going to be our first, Alan McGee wanted it to be our first single, and we come here to do that. And we couldn't get, funnily enough, we couldn't get the drumming right.
And remember, in those days studio time was expensive and often paid for by the hour. Time was ticking, and so the band decided to abandon Bring It On Down. And while the rest of the band took a break, Noel went into the back room of the studio with a pen and paper, and penned in about half an hour what would be the song that changed his life forever.
Written and recorded in one night in Liverpool. We went in to do a demo of Bring It On Down from the gig, and we couldn't get it right, and we had to have something. And I went in the back room and wrote Supersonic in about half hour, recorded it the rest of the night. That's the rough mix. It was never remixed either. It's a magical night. It was brilliant.
Do it. It's just erase what we've done and try something else. And Supersonic happened. It was like, it wasn't like it was actually already written. Noel just went in there and said, "Tony, give me this beat." He starts playing it. He starts jamming over it with his guitar, and then Bonehead, E. They all banged in. It was just, and it just went on. And the song starts, and there's no actual finish in it. There's no actual changes in the drums or anything like that, because the drummer didn't actually know what it was a song. He was just playing this rhythm.
That changed there, right? Press record, let's go. And we did it. And it was done in the day.
Noel asked Tony McCarroll, the band's technically challenged drummer, to lay down a simple bass and snare and bass snare beat. Bonehead was then quickly taught the chord changes, and the song was tracked there and then. Not bad for a day's work, eh? Oh, and fun fact, the lyrics on the song Supersonic, "You need to find a way for what you want to say, but before tomorrow," can be interpreted as a direct reference to the fact that Noel only had 1 day left in the studio, and so he had to find a way to get what he wanted to say, quite literally, written and recorded on wax before the band's studio time ended. Okay, so this next song might surprise some of you. It's a big one, or a bohemian one, if you will. The absolute masterpiece that is Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen was almost never released as a single, would you believe? Now, if you've seen the music documentary film of the same name starring Rami Malek as Freddie Mercury, then you'll be familiar with the scene in which the band meet with the boss of their record label, EMI. The band play him Bohemian Rhapsody from start to finish, with the expectation that the record label will allow them to release the song as the second single from their new album, A Night at the Opera. But much to their dismay, the record label are just not on the same wavelength.
Goes on forever, 6 bloody minutes.
Pity your wife if you think 6 minutes is forever.
So this was the film adaptation, but is it true? Well, according to renowned journalist and broadcaster Leslie Ann Jones, yes it is. EMI did have genuine concerns about releasing Bohemian Rhapsody as a single, especially the fact that it was 6 minutes long.
We're going to release it as our single.
Not possible. Anything over 3 minutes and the radio stations won't program it, period. And what on earth is it about, anyway? Scaramouche?
In the film, Mercury actually takes the record to his pal Kenny Everett, a British radio DJ, to play the track. This pretty much forced the label's hand by getting the record out directly to the public, bypassing the label entirely. Leslie actually states that this is true in a biography, stating Everett played a pivotal role in getting Bohemian Rhapsody released as a single and was famously the first to air the track. So what if Queen had never taken the song directly to Everett? My guess is that EMI would have stood firm, and the song would have likely never been released as a single, slipping under the radar of radio, which at the time was really the only way to get heard. In those days, radio could make or break your career. I'm just thankful that things turned out the way that they did. Now, this next song is another legendary song, by a band that many would say practically invented the metal genre. In fact, this song is considered one of the greatest metal songs of all time, and the riff, iconic to say the least. I am of course talking about Paranoid by Black Sabbath. And the story behind this one, well, you wouldn't believe it.
Paranoid again wasn't really going to be as a single. We wasn't intending on doing a single. We were in the studio to write an album, Paranoid album, which was going to be originally called War Pigs, but that's why the cover was with a chap with a sword and a shield. But they banned it from being called War Pigs, so we called it Paranoid, which had nothing to do with the cover at all.
Another instance in which the song didn't even exist when the band went into the studio to record their second studio album.
We went in to record the album, and in the lunch break, I stayed. I didn't go out to eat with the others. I just stayed at the studio and just came up with this riff, this Paranoid. And when everybody came back, so let's just put this down. So we put it down, and that was it. It wasn't intended as a single or anything. It was just another one for the album, but it did come as a.
Wait, so Paranoid was actually filler? What? So the story goes, as told by the band's bassist, Geezer Butler. A lot of the Paranoid album was written around the time of our first album, Black Sabbath. We recorded the whole thing in about 2 or 3 days live in the studio. The song Paranoid was written as an afterthought. We basically needed a 3-minute filler for the album, and Tony came up with the riff. I quickly did the lyrics, and Ozzy was reading them as he was singing. The band needed a short, fast-paced song to fill out the album. Guitarist Tony Iommi actually came up with the riff in his lunch break, and the rest of the song just quickly followed suit. So despite the song's origins as what was going to be just another song, it actually ended up becoming the band's biggest hit, and arguably is today still the biggest song of the entire metal genre. Well, you know what they say, the best songs usually come quickly. Okay, so this next song needs no introduction. Billie Jean is one of Michael Jackson's most iconic songs. That unforgettable bass line and unmistakable bass and snare drum intro. From the first millisecond, you know it's Billie Jean. But what you probably didn't know is that Michael Jackson's producer at the time, Quincy Jones, initially had reservations about including Billie Jean on the Thriller album. The legend goes that Quincy actually didn't think Billie Jean was a strong enough song to be included on the album. Michael actually states in his autobiography, Moonwalk, that Quincy wanted to change the name of the song from Billie Jean to Not My Lover, because he felt that people would mistakenly think the song was about the tennis player Billie Jean King, which it obviously was not. Jackson subsequently refused to change the song's name. Quincy also apparently thought that the intro to the song was so long that you could, quote, shave drawing it, and that the song needed to, quote, get to the melody sooner. But Michael stood his ground, saying that it was that prolonged intro beat that made him want to dance. And I think we can all agree that MJ was right. He was so right. What's even madder is that the song was actually mixed 91 times by mix engineer Bruce Swedien. Even with its release around the corner, there was something about the song that just didn't sit right with Quincy. But after all that rework, they eventually settled on mix number 2, the album. Just goes to show, doesn't it? Sometimes you can overwork a song so much to the point where it loses its initial spark that made it special in the first place. So, in the end, it looks like Quincy was wrong about Billie Jean. The song topped the charts worldwide, won 2 Grammy Awards, and solidified Jackson's status as the true king of pop. And for our final song, the legendary Every Breath You Take by The Police. Now, if you've ever listened to the band's drummer, Stuart Copeland, or Andy Summers, the band's guitarist, talk about the writing and recording process during their time in The Police, all those years ago, then you know that it wasn't always sunshine and rainbows. Far from it, in fact. The band would often get into disagreements about how certain songs should sound, who should play what part, and when. And Every Breath You Take was no exception. Andy Summers has frequently spoken about how the song almost didn't make it onto the album Synchronicity. Something about the instrumental just wasn't working for the band.
Almost at a standstill, not going to make it onto the album. No one could agree. Sting and Stewart argued for about 6 weeks about where the kick drum and the bass should go. They couldn't seem to get it. But we had something there, and we were in a kind of bedraggled state with this piece of music. What it sounded like was... That was what we had.
But as Andy Summers states in his interview with Rick Beato, all the band needed was a few small words of encouragement by legendary Beatles producer George R.R. Martin.
Is Mr. Martin in? Yeah, what do you want? I said, I'd like to talk to Mr. Martin. Is that possible? Ah, okay, come on in. And she goes, Mr. George, the man here to see you. Okay, and he comes, I go, no, hello, how are you? You know, because he knew we were in there, because we were mega.
Yeah.
So he knew we were in his studio.
Yeah.
I said, I just want to have a chat with you. You know, we're having some difficulty. In fact, it's like a screaming bitch fight. Oh, he says, right, yeah, I've seen that before. He said, well, let's have a cup of tea. It was like sitting down with an admiral. Right. And he was so sweet and such a gentleman. So I sat next to him. What's going on? You know, I said, well, you know, we've got a difficult part. We sort of hate each other, don't want to be together anymore. We can't play. You know, he said, oh, yeah, I remember that. I've seen this, yeah. Difficult. He said, no, I think you're going to do it. And it was, so we had a cup of tea and a nice chat, and it was like he waved his magic wand. He said, no, I think you should walk back over there. I think it's going to be all right. You know, I went back down the valley, pack up the street, walked into the room, and it was all right. We got to be very polite with each other. Oh, would you like to do that? Oh, yes, of course I'll do that. Where would you like it, on the 4th fret or the 5th fret?
And some magic from Andy himself.
We hate each other. He said, go in there, make it your own. Okay, let me just think. Yeah, okay. Okay. One take. That was it. I play this line. Everybody stands up in the control room and cheers. That was it. We do it, straight to number 1.
The song stayed at number 1 for 4 months. And at the time of recording this video, the song has almost 2 billion plays on Spotify. An incredible legacy. So there you have it. 5 hit songs that almost never saw the light of day. All 5 of these songs have stood the test of time, and they've shaped the music that we make and listen to today. It's insane to think how different music would be today had these 5 songs never come into fruition. Let's just be thankful that they did. 5 masterpieces in their own right. So with that said, if you did enjoy the video, please drop it a like and leave a comment down below letting me know which of these songs you would miss the most if it had never been written. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, link in the description as always to my monthly newsletter in which I share what I'm listening to, what I'm watching, as well as some interesting home studio tips and tricks and home studio gear that I'd recommend, that sort of thing. So if that sounds good to you, just enter in your email into the link in description and it will automatically add you to my mailing list. And whilst you're down there, you can also find a link to download the Logic file for my latest single, All In. So if you're interested in how I made the song, you can download the session, open it up on Logic or GarageBand, and deconstruct the session basically. I also documented the whole process of making the song, so for any of you that are interested, I'll leave a link to that series at the end of this video. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
5 and you know it's true.